Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're diving headfirst into the world of open source AI.
Yeah, things are really heating up in this space. It seems like every week there's a new breakthrough or a new player shaking things up.
And that's exactly why we're here. We're going to break down some of the biggest developments, unpack the tech behind them, and explore what it all means for the future of AI.
It's going to be a wild ride, so buckle up.
So who are the main players we'll be focusing on today?
Well, we got to talk about DeepSeek. This Chinese AI company has been making waves with their models, especially Janus-Pro, which is being touted as a rival to some pretty big names like OpenAI's DALL-E 3 and Stability AI's Stable Diffusion.
Okay, DeepSeek, Janus-Pro,
Got it.
and the other big player.
Alibaba. You know, the tech giant, they're throwing their hat in the ring with their Qwen series, specifically Qwen 2.5-Max. It's going to be interesting to see how they stack up against the competition.
So it sounds like we've got a classic David versus Goliath situation brewing here. But instead of slingshots, we're talking algorithms.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is how the open source nature of these models is leveling the playing field. OpenAI had a huge head start, but now things are getting interesting.
All right, deep divers, here's the mission for today's deep dive. We're going to explore these groundbreaking models, understand what makes them tick, and try to grasp the implications of this open source AI revolution. So let's start with DeepSeek and their multimodal model, Janus-Pro. You mentioned it's a rival to DALL-E 3 and Stable Diffusion. What makes it so special?
Well, for starters, it's open source. This means developers can actually see how the model works, tinker with it, and build upon it, which is huge for fostering innovation.
I see. So it's like opening up the hood of a car and letting mechanics see all the parts and how they fit together.
That's a good analogy. And on top of that, Janus-Pro is a multimodal AI.
Multimodal AI. Sounds futuristic. What does that even mean?
It means it can understand and connect different types of data, like text and images. You can give it a description, and it generates an image or show it a picture, and it analyzes the content and can even answer questions about it.
Whoa, so instead of translating languages, it's translating between different types of data.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like a universal translator for information. Pretty cool, huh?
Definitely cool. Now, I got to ask, how does Janus-Pro actually pull off this multimodal magic?
One of the key techniques they use is called decoupled visual encoding, which means it has separate systems for interpreting and creating visuals. So instead of one system trying to do everything, they have specialists, and that leads to better performance overall.
Ah, so it's like having specialized departments within the AI, each one focusing on its own area of expertise.
Exactly. And the training process is incredibly intensive. They use huge data sets like ImageNet for visual recognition and then tons of text-image pairs to make sure it can really connect those two worlds.
So all of that sounds incredibly complex, but can Janus-Pro actually hold its own against the big players like DALL-E 3? What are some of its real-world capabilities?
Well, one area where Janus-Pro really shines is in its ability to recognize and interpret text within images. This has huge potential for things like accessibility, allowing visually impaired users to have the text and images read aloud. It can also be used for extracting data, which could be really useful for research and analysis.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But how does it fare in a head-to-head with DALL-E 3? Are we talking about a David and Goliath situation, or is it more of a fair fight?
Well, it's not a simple answer. There is this interesting test where they gave both models the same prompt. A modern office space design with collaborative workstations, private meeting pods, and natural light presented as a 3D-style rendering. DALL-E 3 did a pretty good job, but Janus-Pro seemed to struggle with the complexity of the prompt.
So round one goes to DALL-E 3.
Not so fast. If you look at the benchmarks that compare these models across a whole bunch of tasks, Janus-Pro actually beats DALL-E 3, particularly in its ability to understand and follow instructions for text-to-image generation.
Ah, so it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Each model has its strengths and weaknesses, like those students who excel in different subjects.
That's a great way to put it. It's important to look at the bigger picture and not just one example.
For sure. So for those deep divers out there who are intrigued and want to test out Janus-Pro, how can they access it?
Well, there's a Hugging Face demo online if you just want to do some quick experimentation and see what it can do. And if you're a bit more tech savvy, you can set up a local GUI using Gradio for a more hands-on experience.
Options for everyone. Now, DeepSeek didn't stop there, right? They've got another model, DeepSeek-R1, which is designed for a different kind of AI challenge. Tell me about that one.
Right. DeepSeek-R1 is their open-source reasoning model. It's built for tasks that require more logical thinking, things like advanced math and coding.
Interesting. So this is a step beyond just mimicking language. What makes a reasoning model different?
Well, Think of a language model like a parrot. It can repeat words and phrases, but it doesn't really understand them. A reasoning model, on the other hand, is actually capable of thought processes. It can break down problems, apply logic, and even explain its steps, almost like a human tutor showing their work.
So it's not just about getting the right answer, but understanding the journey to get there. That transparency must be crucial for applications where trust and explainability are really important.
Exactly. And DeepSeek's journey in developing R1 is pretty interesting. Their first attempt, R10, was all about reinforcement learning. They basically threw the model in the deep end and rewarded it for correct answers, letting it learn through trial and error.
Okay, and how did that go? Any AI going rogue and writing poetry in Klingon?
Not quite. But the outputs were often really hard to understand, even though they were logically sound. It was like having a brilliant mathematician who could only communicate in cryptic riddles.
No, I see. So all brains, no communication skills.
Exactly. So for DeepSeek-R1, they switched to a hybrid approach. They combined reinforcement learning with supervised fine-tuning, which meant feeding the model curated data to make it more readable and coherent. It was like giving that brilliant mathematician a crash course in clear communication.
Makes sense. And did it work?
It did. DeepSeek-R1 was able to produce outputs that were not only correct, but also easy to follow and understand, proving that you can have both brains and good communication skills.
Now, I read something about DeepSeek creating distilled versions of R1. What's the deal with these distilled models?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting. Distillation is this cool technique where you can create smaller, more efficient versions of large models while still preserving most of their capability.
So it's like taking all the knowledge and power of a massive supercomputer and squeezing it into something that can run on your phone.
Exactly. And they use different architectures like Qwen and Llama to create these distilled models, each with varying levels of performance and size. And get this, even the smallest model, DeepSeek-R1 Distill Qwen 1.5b, achieved 83.9% accuracy on Math 500, which is a test for high school math problems.
Hold on. A miniature model acing high school math. That's wild. What are the implications of this?
Well, it means we could potentially run powerful AI on devices with limited resources, like smartphones, tablets, even embedded systems. The possibilities are huge.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is such a big deal. So how can someone actually try out DeepSeek R1? Is there a wait list or?
Nope. DeepSeek actually offers a chat platform where you can interact directly with the model. It's a great way to get a feel for its capabilities and experiment with different prompts. And if you're a developer and want to integrate R1 into your applications, they have an API for that too.
And what about the cost? Is this going to break the bank?
Not at all. The chat platform is actually free, although there are daily message limits. And their API pricing is way lower than OpenAI's O1, which makes it a lot more accessible.
Affordable and powerful. I like the sound of that. But how does DeepSeek R1 actually stack up against the established players like OpenAI's O1? Can it really compete?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Let's see what the benchmarks tell us.
Hit me with it. Who comes out on top?
Well, when it comes to advanced math reasoning, DeepSeek-R1 actually beats O1 1217 on both AIM 2024 and Math 500, which are pretty tough tests. And it's neck and neck with O1 1217 on Code Forces for coding and SW Bench Verified for software engineering skills.
Wow, so it's definitely holding its own.
It is. But it's worth noting that OpenAI's O1 1217 still has a slight edge in factual reasoning based on the GPQA Diamond benchmark and in multitask language understanding as measured by MMLU.
So each model has its strengths, but the fact that an open source model can even compete at this level is pretty amazing. What does this mean for the AI industry? Was DeepSeek's release a bombshell?
Oh, it definitely sent shockwaves through the industry. NVIDIA's stock actually took a big hit after DeepSeek-R1 was released. Investors got worried that these efficient open-source models might mean less demand for high-performance hardware, which is a key part of NVIDIA's business.
Whoa, so we're not just talking about algorithms battling it out. We're talking about potentially disrupting the entire economic ecosystem around AI.
Exactly. And this brings up something called Jevons paradox. Basically, as technology gets more efficient, we often end up using more of it, not less.
It's like getting a fuel-efficient car and then driving twice as much because it's cheaper.
Exactly. So the lower cost of AI driven by these open source models could actually lead to a surge in demand, which might offset any initial concerns about hardware reliance.
That's really interesting. And how did OpenAI react to DeepSeek's rise? Were they happy about the competition?
Well, not exactly. OpenAI actually accused DeepSeek of using a technique called distillation to steal knowledge from their proprietary models. They basically claimed intellectual property theft.
So OpenAI felt like DeepSeek was peeking at their secret recipe book.
Yeah, something like that. But it's worth pointing out that they didn't offer any concrete evidence to back up their claim. Some people think it might have been more of a strategic move to calm down their investors who might have been feeling a bit nervous about this new competition.
It's all getting very cloak and dagger. All right, so we've seen how DeepSeek is making waves with both Janus-Pro and DeepSeek-R1. Now let's talk about Alibaba and their contender, Qwen 2.5-Max, which is going head-to-head with models like GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 Sonnet.
Okay, so Qwen 2.5-Max is a little different. It's a generalist model, not a reasoning model like DeepSeek-R1 or OpenAI's O1. It's not focused on explaining its thinking process, but on its breadth of knowledge and ability to handle a wide range of tasks.
So it's more like a vast library of information than a tutor who shows their work. But doesn't that make it a bit of a black box? How do we know what's going on inside?
That's a fair point. But even though Qwen 2.5-Max doesn't explicitly explain its reasoning, it's still using some really advanced techniques under the hood. One key element is its mixture of experts, or MOE architecture, which DeepSeek v3 also uses.
MOE architecture. That sounds kind of sci-fi. Break it down for me.
Sure, it's basically a way to make models more efficient and scalable. Imagine having a team of specialists, each with their own area of expertise. When you give the model a task, only the relevant experts are activated instead of the entire model working on every problem.
So it's like having a brain surgeon on call only when you need brain surgery, not making you breakfast every morning.
Exactly. This selective activation allows models like Qwen 2.5-Max to handle tons of data and complex tasks without needing crazy amounts of computing power.
That's pretty clever. Speaking of data, how much data did they feed this Qwen 2.5-Max beast?
They trained it on a massive 20 trillion tokens. That's like 168 million copies of 1984.
Wow. No wonder it's so knowledgeable. But just having a ton of data doesn't automatically make you smart.
Right.
What else did Alibaba do to make sure Qwen 2.5-Max could actually use all that information effectively?
Well, they used a combination of supervised fine-tuning and reinforcement learning from human feedback. So basically, they had human annotators guide the model toward better responses and then used feedback to make sure it's giving answers that align with what humans want and expect.
So they made it accurate and a good listener. I like it. So how did all that training pay off? How does Qwen 2.5-Max perform on the benchmarks?
It does really well, especially on Arena Hard, which focuses on how well models align with human preferences. It also holds its own on benchmarks like MLU Pro, GPQA, Diamond, and Live Codebench, showing it can handle knowledge, reasoning, and coding tasks.
Sounds like a well-rounded contender.
It is. And when you look at the base model benchmarks, which compare the foundation of the models before any fine-tuning, Qwen 2.5-Max actually leads in a bunch of categories, like general knowledge, language understanding, coding, and even mathematical problem solving.
Impressive. Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, I want to try out this Qwen 2.5-Max thing. What are their options?
Well, Alibaba has made it super easy to access. They have a user-friendly platform called Qwen Chat, kind of like ChatGPT, where you can interact directly with the model. And for developers who want to integrate it into their applications, they offer the Alibaba Cloud Model Studio API.
Awesome. Options for everyone. It's really exciting to see how accessible these powerful AI tools are becoming. What are your thoughts on this trend?
It's an amazing development. The fact that more people can get their hands on these tools opens up so many possibilities. It allows individuals, researchers, developers, everyone to experiment and potentially create things we haven't even imagined yet.
It really feels like we're on the cusp of a major shift in how we approach and use AI, and open source models are leading the charge.
Absolutely. This increased competition and collaboration are driving innovation at an incredible pace. It's such a dynamic and evolving field, and I can't wait to see where it takes us next.
Me neither. We've covered a lot of ground so far, from DeepSeek's groundbreaking models to Alibaba's impressive contender. What are some of the key things you hope our deep divers will remember from today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the AI landscape is changing rapidly. The rise of open source models is making AI more accessible, leading to more competition, faster progress, and more choices for users. It's truly an exciting time to be following this field, and I have a feeling the next few years will bring even more groundbreaking advancements.
It's mind-blowing to think about the impact these open source models are having. I mean, even NVIDIA, a hardware giant, felt the tremors when DeepSeek-R1 dropped.
Oh yeah, that stock drop was a major wake-up call. It showed just how disruptive this tech can be. We're not just talking about algorithms duking it out. This is about reshaping entire industries.
It really makes you wonder How many other companies are watching this unfold, thinking, what does this mean for us? We talked earlier about Jevons paradox, how increased efficiency often leads to increased demand. Do you think that applies here? Could open source AI actually boost the AI market as a whole?
I think it's definitely a possibility. As these open source models drive down the cost of AI, it opens up a whole new world of applications and uses that were just too expensive before. That increased accessibility could lead to a huge surge in demand, potentially helping even the companies that felt threatened initially.
It's like a rising tide lifting all boats, even if some of those boats are scrambling to adjust to the new currents. But it's not just about the economics, right? There are bigger societal implications to think about as well.
Absolutely. As AI gets more powerful and more common, we need to be really careful about how it impacts different parts of society. For example, we've seen how AI can sometimes reflect or even amplify biases that are present in the data it's trained on.
Yeah, that's a huge concern. It's like AI is holding up a magnifying glass to our societal biases,
Yeah.
and we need to be super cautious about how we develop and use these systems to make sure they're fair and equitable for everyone.
Exactly. And as AI takes on bigger roles in things like healthcare, education, and finance, the stakes just get higher. We need to
Yeah.
have some serious conversations about the ethics of AI and how we can prevent any potential harm.
It's not enough to just build impressive algorithms. We need to make sure those algorithms are aligned with human values and actually benefit society as a whole.
Ugh.
And that's where the open source nature of these models comes in, right?
Absolutely. Open source development brings transparency and collaboration, which are crucial for tackling these ethical issues. When the code is out in the open, researchers and developers can examine it, spot potential biases, and work together to build more responsible and equitable AI systems.
It's like a system of checks and balances, a whole community of experts working together to make sure these powerful tools are used for good.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most encouraging things about the open source movement. It's about creating a sense of shared responsibility for shaping the future of AI.
It's like a giant global brainstorming session where everyone's pitching in to make sure AI reaches its full potential while avoiding any potential pitfalls.
That's a great analogy. And
Yeah.
this collaborative spirit goes beyond just the ethical stuff. Open source AI can also speed up innovation by letting researchers build on each other's work, sharing knowledge and resources in a way that just wasn't possible before.
It's like a global research lab where everyone's contributing to a constantly evolving pool of knowledge.
Exactly. And that rapid pace of innovation is what makes this field so exciting. Who knows what amazing breakthroughs are just around the corner?
It's hard to even imagine, but I can't wait to see what happens. And it's not just about the flashy headline-grabbing stuff. Open source AI can also empower individuals and communities in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
That's a great point. As AI becomes more accessible, it can be used to address local issues, create new opportunities, and empower people to solve problems in their own communities. It's about making technology more democratic and putting the power of AI into the hands of the people who can use it to make a real difference.
It's an inspiring vision, a future where AI isn't this mysterious force controlled by a select few, but a tool for positive change that anyone can use.
And it's a vision that's becoming more and more attainable thanks to the open source movement. It's a truly exciting time to be involved in AI, and I'm incredibly optimistic about the future we're creating together.
Me too. This deep dive has been so insightful. Thank you for sharing your expertise with me and our listeners.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations about the complexities of AI and how it's impacting the world.
And to all our deep divers out there, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the power of open source AI and its potential to shape the future.
Until next time, keep those algorithms open and those minds curious.
As we've been talking about all of this, I can't help but feel like we're at a turning point, a real crossroads when it comes to AI.
Yeah, the decisions we make now are going to have huge consequences down the line. It's exciting, but also a little bit daunting, you know?
It is. It's like we're standing at this fork in the road, and one path leads to a future where AI is used to boost our creativity and solve those big problems that have been nagging us forever.
And the other path, well, it might lead to a future where those inequalities we're already struggling with get even worse, or we create new problems we're not ready for.
That's a sobering thought. But I guess it's important to acknowledge those potential downsides so we can try our best to avoid them, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think the key here is to create a culture of open discussion and ethical awareness, not just among tech people, but everyone.
Right. We need to be having these conversations with policymakers, ethicists, social scientists, even just everyday people. AI is going to affect all of us.
Exactly. Everyone has a voice, and everyone's perspective matters. It's not just about building the coolest algorithms. It's about making sure those algorithms are aligned with human values and serve a good
That's
purpose.
a powerful message. It's a reminder that the future isn't set in stone. We're the ones shaping it with the choices we make today.
Couldn't agree more. By asking the tough questions, demanding transparency, and holding the people who are developing and using these tools accountable, we can help make sure AI is used for good.
This deep dive has been such an eye-opener. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with me and our deep divers.
It's been a pleasure. These conversations about AI and its impact on the world are always fascinating.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you've come away with a new understanding of open source AI and its good. Until next time, deep divers.